What happens when I steal cash from my husband's wallet every week to fund secret hotel rooms, club nights, and romantic getaways with multiple lovers? How does he uncover the truth by tracking the missing money until every gap points straight to me? And when the paper trail leads back to my lies, how do I even try to justify what I did? I'm Cressida, and I never thought of myself as a thief. But standing in our garage that Wednesday evening, watching the orange light filter through the dusty windows, I realized that labels matter less than actions. Marcus had just come inside from checking the tire pressure on his car. He always did this on Wednesdays. Every single week, the same routine. And every single week, he left his wallet on the workbench next to his tools. The leather was still warm from his back pocket when I picked it up. I told myself this was not really stealing. How could I steal from my own household? We were married. His money was technically my money. The law said so. Besides, he made decent money as an accountant. He would never notice $40 missing here, $60 missing there. I slipped 3 20s from the billfold and tucked them into my bra. Something about that small act made me feel powerful, like I was finally taking back something he owed me. Marcus came back into the garage wiping his hands on an old rag. He asked if I wanted to order pizza for dinner since he was tired from work. I said pizza sounded fine. He smiled his usual smile and walked past me into the house. He had no idea what I had just done. His easy trust should have made me feel guilty. Instead, it irritated me. If he loved me enough, would he not guard things more carefully? Would he not sense that something was wrong? His obliviousness felt like proof that I did not matter to him the way I should. Later that night, I stood in our master bedroom examining myself in the mirror. 34 years old, still attractive, still desirable, but trapped in a house with a man who thought romance meant asking if I wanted pepperoni or sausage on my pizza. We had been married for 8 years. 8 years of his schedules and his spreadsheets and his careful plans that never included spontaneity. 8 years of being a mother first, a wife second, and a woman never. I deserved more than this. Every magazine and movie told me so. Life was supposed to be passionate. Love was supposed to be exciting. If Marcus could not provide that, why should I suffer in silence? The cash in my purse represented freedom. Not theft. Freedom. My best friend Bree had texted me earlier that day. She said Dion was asking about me again. He wanted to know if I was free on Saturday. There was a new place downtown that was cash only and very exclusive. My heart had raced reading her message. Dion made me feel seen in ways Marcus never did. He asked about my day and actually listened to my answers. I had typed back that I was definitely interested. Now, standing in the bedroom I shared with my husband, I felt no guilt, only anticipation. Marcus was already asleep, his gentle snoring filling the room. He had gone to bed at 10 o'clock, like always. No goodnight kiss, no conversation about our days, just routine. The following Wednesday, I was back in the garage. This time, Marcus had left his wallet on the passenger seat of his car because he forgot something inside and rushed back in. I had maybe 30 seconds. My fingers moved fast, already practiced. 4 20s disappeared into my pocket. I considered taking a 50, but decided that might be too noticeable. Something about the rhythm of this had become satisfying. Every Wednesday, he created an opportunity without knowing. Every Wednesday, I took what I needed for my other life. I heard his footsteps returning and quickly closed the car door. When he came back, I pretended to be looking for garden shears. He asked what I was doing out here. I said I thought I left the shears somewhere and could not find them. He offered to help look, but I said never mind. The lie came so easily. It surprised me how natural deception had become. Saturday arrived wrapped in possibility. I told Marcus I was meeting Bree for a girls' day. Shopping, lunch, maybe a movie. He said that sounded nice and asked if I needed the car or if Bree was picking me up. I said Bree would pick me up. He nodded, already turning back to his laptop where he was reviewing something for work. Bree did pick me up, but she only drove me 6 blocks before dropping me at the gym parking lot. Dion waited there in his silver car. He smiled when I climbed in. He said I looked incredible. He asked if I was ready for an adventure. I felt alive in a way I had not felt in years. We drove to a small hotel called the Marigold Inn. It was quiet and, most importantly, cash only. No credit card trail. No paper evidence. Dion had recommended it specifically for that reason. We spent 3 hours there. Afterward, we went to a rooftop bar called Elevation, where Dion knew the bartender. By the time Bree picked me up that evening, I had spent $140. All cash. All from Marcus's wallet. I told Marcus the movie was good, a romantic comedy. He asked which one. I gave him a title I had seen online. He said he was glad I had fun. His simple acceptance felt like permission from the universe. 3 weeks into my Wednesday routine, something small changed. Marcus moved his wallet. Instead of leaving it on the workbench or in the car, he started placing it on his nightstand. When I asked casually about it, he said he thought it was safer inside. That night, I waited until he was deeply asleep before carefully sliding bills from the wallet. I had become skilled at this. What I did not notice was his phone lying face down beside the wallet. The screen briefly showed a calendar reminder for something called Downtown Office at 3 in the afternoon. The next morning, Marcus was already awake when I came downstairs. He sat at the kitchen table with his laptop open, but he minimized the screen the moment I entered. He smiled and asked if I slept well. His voice was normal. His eyes were not. For the first time, a small cold feeling settled in my stomach. But I pushed it away and poured my coffee, already thinking about the cash I would need for next weekend. The dental office smelled like mint and sterilization. I sat at my reception desk, scrolling through my phone while the hygienist finished with a patient in room 2. Bree leaned over from her adjacent desk with a conspiratorial whisper. She asked how things were going with Dion. I told her things were going very well. She asked if I was being careful with the money situation. I said Marcus noticed nothing. Bree laughed quietly and said I was living the dream. Something about the phrase made me straighten a little taller. The dream. Yes. That was exactly what this was. A dream I had crafted for myself out of the materials of my disappointing reality. My phone buzzed with a message from Dion asking if I was free tonight. Raphael was working at Elevation and we could get free drinks. I smiled and typed back that I would figure something out. Bree saw my expression and said I was glowing lately. She said this lifestyle looked good on me. I told her not to say things so loudly. She rolled her eyes and said nobody was listening anyway. But her words hung in the air between us. I preferred to think of what I was doing as self-care, as reclaiming my identity, as doing what any woman would do if her husband had stopped seeing her as a person. That evening, I found Marcus in the living room with his laptop. This was not unusual since he often worked from home in the evenings. But something about his posture seemed different, more focused, more intent. When I sat down across from him, he closed the laptop halfway. Not all the way, but enough that I could not see the screen. He said he had noticed some irregularities in our cash. He said he tracked household spending loosely, just to make sure we stayed on budget. He had realized that cash seemed to be disappearing faster than normal. He asked if I had been using it for something. My heart beat once, hard, then steadied. I asked what he meant by disappearing. I kept my voice light and curious and innocent. He said he used to take out $200 every 2 weeks for small purchases. But lately that cash was gone within days, even though he had not spent more than usual himself. I felt the familiar rush of righteous anger. Here was proof that he only cared about money, that he valued his ledgers more than my feelings. I said I had no idea what he was talking about. I said maybe he was spending more than he realized. I said it was strange that he was suddenly tracking cash like some kind of accountant. Then I paused and said, "Oh, wait, he was an accountant. How convenient." The sarcasm landed. His jaw tightened. But instead of arguing, he simply nodded slowly and said he must have miscounted. He opened his laptop again, angling it away from me. I went upstairs feeling victorious. He had backed down. He had believed me. What I did not see was the spreadsheet he pulled up after I left. The columns were labelled with dates. The rows showed amounts. In the corner of the spreadsheet, a small note read, "Variance and investigate. The rooftop bar elevation sat atop a 14-story building downtown. The city spread below like a glittering promise." Up here, I was not Marcus's wife. I was not Lily's mother. I was Cressida, mysterious and desirable and free. Raphael smiled as Dion and I approached the bar. He said it was good to see us again. Dion ordered whiskey. I asked for a mojito with extra mint. Raphael's hands were quick and graceful as he worked. He did not look away from me while he made the drinks. Something about his attention made me feel powerful in a different way than Dion's attention did. Dion was physical admiration. Raphael was something slower and more considered. I found myself wondering what it would be like to have both of them. The thought should have shocked me. Instead, it thrilled me. Why should I limit myself? Marcus had limited me for 8 years. Now I was learning that desire was infinite, and I deserved to explore every corner of it. I paid for the first round in cash, $60, including tip. The bills came from Marcus's wallet, taken just that morning while he showered. 3 days later, I stood in the supermarket checkout line. I was buying groceries for a dinner Marcus had requested. His parents were visiting that weekend. The basket held all his favourites. The specific pasta his mother preferred. The cheese his father always mentioned. The wine that had become tradition. I resented every item. These purchases were for his family and his obligations and his idea of how weekends should be spent. The woman in front of me turned around, and my stomach dropped. It was Mrs. Patterson, our neighbour from 2 houses down. She smiled and said what a coincidence. She said she had just been telling her husband she saw me downtown last week. She said I had looked lovely, all dressed up in the middle of a Wednesday afternoon. She asked if I had been at that new restaurant near the plaza. My mouth went dry. Wednesday afternoon. I had told Marcus I was at a dentist appointment. I had been at the Marigold Inn with Dion. I said Mrs. Patterson must have seen someone who looked like me. I said I was at the dentist on Wednesday. Such a boring errand. She tilted her head, looking uncertain. She said she could have sworn it was me, but maybe she was wrong. I laughed and said I wished I had been somewhere as exciting as downtown. She laughed too, though her eyes stayed curious. In the parking lot, loading bags into my car, I felt the cold feeling return. Mrs. Patterson had seen me. Had she seen Dion? How much had she actually noticed? I told myself it did not matter. Even if she said something to Marcus, I would deny it. Her word against mine. When I got home, Marcus was on the phone in the hallway. He spoke quietly and turned away when he saw me approach. I caught only fragments of his conversation. Yes, I understand. Thursday works better. I will bring everything. I asked who he was talking to. He ended the call quickly and said it was just a work thing. A client with a complicated situation. Nothing important. But his tone was different. Flatter. More measured. The warmth that used to thread through his voice had faded into something polite and distant. Later that evening, I noticed his laptop was open to a page I did not recognize. When I walked closer, he minimized the screen smoothly. On his desk sat a thin binder labeled Household. I had never seen it before. When I asked about it, he said it was just organization stuff, bills and receipts. He was trying to be more systematic. That night, he went to bed early. When I came upstairs later, he appeared to be asleep. But something about the set of his shoulders felt wrong, too controlled, too deliberate. The next morning, he made his own breakfast without asking if I wanted anything. He answered my questions with single words. His phone stayed in his pocket, and he stepped outside twice to take calls. It was like talking to a courteous stranger. Carmine's family restaurant had been the site of every vain celebration for 15 years. The long table in the back room with red-checkered tablecloths. The owner who remembered everyone's name. It was tradition carved into every detail. I hated it. Sitting across from Nora and Gerald, Watching Marcus help his father with the menu, I felt the familiar suffocation of being absorbed into someone else's family story. This was their anniversary, their restaurant, their traditions. I was just a supporting character in the Marcus Vane show. My phone buzzed in my purse, a text from Dion saying he missed me and asking when he could see me again. I smiled without meaning to. Nora noticed and asked what I was smiling about. I said just a funny message from Bree. She nodded, but her eyes lingered on me a moment too long. Marcus ordered the same thing he always ordered. His parents ordered the same thing they always ordered. Even the wine was identical to last year. Nothing changed in this family. Nothing evolved. They were fossils preserved in the amber of routine. I ordered the most expensive item on the menu just to feel alive. The waiter raised an eyebrow, but I did not care. Marcus would pay. He always paid. That was his purpose in my life now. Gerald stood to make his toast. His glass of wine trembled slightly in his aged hand. He spoke about 40 years of marriage, about patience and commitment, about the small moments that built a lifetime together. I wanted to scream. This was what they celebrated? 40 years of the same conversations and the same restaurant and the same boring devotion? This was not love. This was surrender. This was giving up on passion because passion was too difficult. When Gerald mentioned how proud he was that Marcus had found a wonderful partner to build a life with, something snapped inside me. Marcus smiled with modest gratitude, but I saw my opportunity. I raised my own glass and said I wanted to add something. The table quieted. Marcus looked at me with cautious curiosity. I said Gerald and Nora had set such a beautiful example. I said it was amazing how they had stayed together for 40 years, doing exactly the same things. I said not everyone could be satisfied with such a simple life. I said some people needed more excitement and spontaneity, more than just showing up day after day. I said I suppose that was the difference between people who settled and people who wanted something extraordinary. The silence that followed was thick enough to touch. Gerald lowered his glass slowly. Nora's smile froze into something harder. Pamela stared at me like I had grown a second head. Marcus set down his wine and said quietly that he thought I had said enough. His voice was not angry. It was tired and disappointed, like I had confirmed something he already suspected. I told myself he was being dramatic. I was just being honest. If they could not handle honesty, that was their problem. Pamela followed me to the bathroom. She stood by the sink while I washed my hands. Her arms were crossed and her expression was tight with controlled fury. She asked what exactly I was trying to do out there. She asked if I understood that I had just insulted her parents at their anniversary dinner. I told her I had not insulted anyone. I said I was simply observing that not everyone wanted the same kind of life. She said that was a convenient interpretation of what I had said. She asked if something was wrong with me lately. I could have apologized. Instead, I felt the reckless courage that came from weeks of stolen money and secret afternoons. I said maybe the problem was that everyone in this family expected me to be grateful for mediocrity. I said maybe I had realized I deserved more than what I was getting. I said maybe Marcus should try harder instead of assuming I would always be satisfied with crumbs. Pamela's face shifted from anger to something else. Realization. Concern. She said very quietly that she did not know what was going on with me, but I was hurting her brother. She could see it in his eyes. Whatever I thought I deserved, Marcus did not deserve to be treated like this. I laughed and walked past her without responding. Let her watch. Let them all watch. The next day, I met Dion in the gym parking lot. He was leaning against his car with sunglasses on. He looked like every fantasy I had built in the quiet spaces of my marriage. When he saw me approach, he smiled and said he had missed me. I told him about the dinner and about Pamela's confrontation. I told him how suffocating Marcus's family was. Dion listened with sympathetic nods. He said it sounded like I was surrounded by people who did not appreciate me. He said I deserved someone who saw my value. He said he definitely saw my value. His hand found mine, and the touch sent electricity through my fingers. But then he said something that snagged in my mind. He asked if Marcus suspected anything. He asked if I was being careful enough. He said he did not want any drama showing up at his gym. The shift was subtle but unmistakable. Dion was not worried about me. He was worried about himself, about his convenience, about his comfortable arrangement. I pushed the thought away and told myself he was just being practical. That weekend, I went to Elevation alone because Dion had cancelled last minute. Raphael raised an eyebrow when he saw me without my usual companion. We ended up on the smoking patio talking while the city lights spread below us like scattered diamonds. Raphael asked what was going on with me. He said I seemed restless. I told him my life felt like a cage. I told him my husband did not see me. I told him I was tired of being invisible. Raphael listened in that slow, considering way of his. Then he said something unexpected. He said he had been recording some of our conversations on his phone. Not for any bad reason, he said quickly. He just liked remembering things. He hoped I did not mind. The confession should have alarmed me. Instead, it thrilled me. Someone thought I was worth recording. I told him I did not mind at all. I told him it was actually flattering. What I did not realize was that Raphael's recordings were not about admiration. They were insurance. Marcus picked me up at 10 o'clock that night. I had texted him that my car was having trouble. The drive home was completely silent. He focused on the road while I looked out the window. The space between us felt wider than the actual distance. When we got home, I noticed a new binder on the kitchen counter. It was thicker than before, with tabs visible along the edge. The label read, Home and Auto. One section was marked Bank. That night, Marcus slept in the guest room for the first time. He said he was having trouble sleeping and did not want to disturb me. The empty space beside me in our bed felt like a verdict I was not ready to hear. The park near our house had a large wooden playground shaped like a pirate ship. Lily loved it. She would spend hours climbing the rigging and sliding down the plank and pretending to search for treasure. I sat on a bench nearby scrolling through my phone and barely watching her play. A text from Raphael appeared on my screen. He said that photo from Elevation was really something. He said I looked stunning. He had sent a picture of me at the bar with city lights behind me. His hand was just visible at the edge of the frame. The image made me feel powerful and desired. Lily ran over breathless and flushed from playing. She said she wanted to show me the treasure she found. It was a smooth grey stone, ordinary, but she held it like it was gold. I told her it was very nice and went back to my phone. She stood there a moment watching me. Then she asked a question that stopped my scrolling. She asked who the man in Mommy's phone pictures was. She said she saw photos sometimes when I was showing her games. There was a man who was not Daddy. My throat tightened immediately. I told her it was just a friend from work. She asked why the friend was holding my hand in one picture. I said friends sometimes held hands. She looked at me with her father's eyes, that same careful, observant gaze that saw more than it should. Then she said something worse. She said she heard me talking on the phone last night when Daddy was asleep. She said I was laughing a lot and saying someone's name. She asked who Dion was. The name in her small voice sounded obscene. I told her Dion was just a co-worker. I told her grown-ups had lots of friends. I told her she should not listen to private conversations. She nodded slowly, but her face held doubt. At 6 years old, she already understood that something was wrong. She just did not have the words for it yet. I deleted Raphael's photo while she watched. Then I suggested we get ice cream. Distraction was the best tool I had. Marcus had been sleeping in the guest room for 2 weeks now. He said it was because he had been working late and did not want to disturb me. He said it was temporary. But his side of our bed remained untouched. His clothes migrated to the guest room closet. His toiletries now had a permanent place in the smaller bathroom. One night I went to him. I stood in the doorway of the guest room and asked if we could talk. He looked up from his laptop and said yes, we could talk. I sat on the edge of the bed and asked if he was angry with me. He said he was not angry. I asked what he was feeling. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said he was thinking about what kind of person he wanted to be. He said he was thinking about what kind of father he wanted to be for Lily. He said he was thinking about a lot of things that required clarity. The word clarity felt like a warning. I asked what clarity meant. He said it meant making sure he understood the situation fully before making any decisions. He said he was someone who needed information before he acted. That was how he was built. I felt the chill of his detachment. This was not the same man who had begged me for attention in the early years. This was someone calculating and weighing and preparing. I should have been worried. Instead, I was annoyed. I told him he was being dramatic. I told him our marriage had problems, but they were not that serious. I told him to stop acting like everything was falling apart. He nodded slowly and said maybe I was right. He said he was probably overthinking things. But his eyes did not match his words. His eyes were steady and resolved. On his nightstand, his phone lay face down. The screen briefly lit up with a notification I could not see. He glanced at it and dismissed it, and turned back to me with that patient, measured expression. The next evening, I overheard Marcus on the phone in the living room. He spoke in low tones, almost whispering. I caught fragments from the hallway. Yes, the dates match. I have all of that documented. No, I understand the process. I appreciate you explaining the timeline. When I walked in, he ended the call smoothly and said it was just a work client with a complicated tax situation. That night, while he was in the shower, I opened his laptop. The screen showed a spreadsheet, columns of dates and amounts and sources. Some entries were highlighted in red. I recognized numbers, the cash I had taken, the dates I had taken it. He was tracking everything. My heart hammered, but I forced myself to think. This was just Marcus being Marcus, obsessive and organized. It did not mean he knew anything. I could explain the money. I could say I had been buying gifts or putting aside savings for a surprise. I closed the laptop carefully and left the room. Pamela's charity event at the community centre was supposed to be elegant and supportive. Instead, it became a battlefield. The hall was decorated with white tablecloths and silent auction items. Marcus's family circulated among friends and colleagues. My mother Donna had come as my ally. She was already complaining about the parking and the cheap wine. I saw Nora watching me from across the room. Her gaze was different now. Not cold exactly, but evaluating. Like she was trying to solve a puzzle she had previously ignored. Marcus stood near his father talking quietly. He had barely acknowledged me since we arrived. We had driven separately and the choice had not gone unnoticed. Tanya found me near the auction table. Her smile was strained. She said she had been meaning to reach out, but things had been busy. She asked how I was doing. Really? I told her I was fine. She hesitated, then said she had heard some things. From her husband, who had talked to Marcus. She said she could not say exactly what, but she thought I should know that Marcus was different lately. Focused. Prepared. Before I could respond, Donna appeared and pulled me away. She said Pamela was being terrible and we should leave early. She said this family had always looked down on me. The confrontation happened during Pamela's speech. She thanked donors and mentioned her family's support. She gestured toward her parents and Marcus. She did not mention me. The omission was obvious. When Pamela walked past our table afterward, she stopped. She said loudly that she hoped I was enjoying the evening. She asked if I had found the parking convenient since I had arrived so late. I could have stayed quiet. Instead, I said perhaps Pamela should focus on her own marriage instead of worrying about mine. The lie came easily. Pamela's expression hardened. She said she knew something was very wrong. When it came out, she would be there for her brother. That night after we got home, Lily was waiting. When Marcus went to tuck her in, I heard her small voice asking if Mommy and Daddy were going to live in different houses. She asked if she did something wrong. Marcus told her that grown-ups sometimes had problems, but it was never her fault. He promised she would always be safe and loved. I stood outside the door with my eyes burning. This was the moment I should have stopped. Instead, I felt resentment. Marcus was making me the villain. If he had just been better, I would never have needed to look elsewhere. It was still his fault. It had to be. The gym parking lot looked different in the harsh morning light. Dion sat in his car, not getting out. When I approached, he lowered the window and asked me to stay outside. He said he did not want to be seen together right now. The request stung deeply. I asked what was going on. He said he had been thinking. He said things were getting complicated. He said he had heard some rumors from a friend of a friend that my husband might be asking questions. My stomach dropped immediately. I asked what kind of questions. He said he did not know exactly. But someone had mentioned that Marcus had been looking into credit card statements and cash withdrawals. Someone had mentioned that Marcus seemed unusually focused lately. I told Dion that Marcus was just an accountant who was obsessed with numbers. I told him it meant nothing at all. But Dion shook his head slowly. He said he liked me, and he really did. But he was not looking to get involved in someone else's divorce. He said maybe we should cool things off for a while, just until things settled down. The word divorce hit me like cold water. I told Dion there was no divorce happening. I told him he was overreacting completely. I told him Marcus did not suspect anything. And even if he did, he was too passive to do anything about it. Dion looked at me with something I had not seen before. Doubt. He said he hoped I was right. He said he would call me in a few weeks when things calmed down. Then he rolled up the window and drove away. I stood alone in the parking lot watching his car disappear. The rejection burned inside me. After everything I had risked, after all the money I had spent on our dates. He was just leaving, pulling back, protecting himself. But what about me? Who was protecting me? The answer was no one. Marcus had never protected me emotionally. Dion was abandoning me at the first sign of trouble. Even Raphael, with his slow smiles and recorded conversations, was just using me for entertainment. I was alone. I had always been alone. The thought should have prompted self-reflection. Instead, it hardened my resentment. If everyone was going to abandon me, I would take what I could before they did. That evening, I found Marcus in the guest room organizing clothes. He had brought over more items from our shared closet, shirts hung neatly on hangers, pants folded precisely in the dresser. His toiletries now had a permanent place in the guest bathroom. I stood in the doorway and asked what he was doing. He said he was just getting organized. He said it was easier to have everything in one place. I asked if he was planning to live in the guest room forever. He looked at me with that calm, measured expression I had grown to hate. He said he was not planning anything forever. He said he was simply being practical for the current situation. He said when things became clearer, decisions would be made. The phrase "when things became clearer" echoed like a warning. I demanded to know what that meant. I said he was being dramatic. I said he was punishing me for nothing at all. He did not raise his voice. He did not defend himself. He simply said he was not punishing anyone. He said he was protecting himself and their daughter. He said that was his responsibility as a father and a person. The word protecting felt like an accusation. I asked what he was protecting himself from. He paused and considered his words carefully. Then he said he was protecting himself from making decisions based on emotion. He said emotional decisions led to mistakes. He said he wanted to make sure that whatever happened next was handled properly. Handled properly. The phrase should have terrified me. Instead, I dismissed it completely. I told him he was cold and cruel. I told him his silence was a form of emotional abuse. I told him a real husband would fight for his marriage instead of retreating into spreadsheets and guest rooms. He listened to everything I said. Then he nodded slowly and said, "Maybe I was right." He said maybe he should have fought harder years ago. He said it was too late for that now. The finality in his voice was unmistakable, but I refused to hear it. 3 days later, the kitchen became a battlefield. I found Marcus at the table with Lily helping her with homework. They looked comfortable together, father and daughter in a bubble that did not include me. When I entered, Lily looked up and smiled. Marcus glanced at me briefly, then returned to the math problems. I asked what time Lily needed to be at school tomorrow. Marcus said he would drop her off on his way to work. I asked why he was dropping her off when I always did the morning routine. He said his schedule had changed and it was more convenient this way. I said I wanted to drop off my own daughter. I said he was not going to push me out of her life. Lily's face crumpled. She asked why we were fighting again. She asked if she could go to her room. Marcus told her gently that yes, she could go. Mommy and Daddy just needed to discuss something. After she left, Marcus said quietly that he would appreciate it if we could avoid arguing in front of Lily. He said she was already struggling with the tension in the house. She did not need to witness her parents fighting. I told him there would not be tension if he stopped acting like a robot. I told him his coldness was the problem. Then he said something that stopped me cold. He said I was right that Lily could feel the changes. That was why he was being very careful about how he handled things. He wanted to make sure that when the situation resolved, Lily would understand that her father had done everything properly and legally, and with her best interests at heart. Legally. The word hung in the air between us. I asked what he meant by legally. He said he meant exactly what the word suggested. He believed in following proper procedures. That was how he had always lived his life. That weekend, my mother came for lunch. Donna had always been my greatest defender. She said she had noticed changes in my voice when we talked on the phone. She asked what was really going on. I told her about the guest room and about Marcus's coldness. I told her about his strange comments about handling things properly and legally. Donna's eyes narrowed. She said that sounded like a man preparing for something. She said I needed to protect myself financially. She said I should start moving money into accounts he did not know about. Her advice was practical, but something about hearing it from my mother felt different, like I was following a script that led somewhere dark. Monday night, Marcus asked to speak with me. He sat at the kitchen table with his hands folded and his expression neutral. He said he wanted me to know that he had been doing a lot of thinking. He said he had been meeting with some people who could help him understand his options. He said he had been organizing information and making sure he understood the full picture. Then he said he was not going to fight with me. He was not going to yell or accuse or demand explanations. Instead, he was going to handle everything properly. He stood and walked toward the guest room. At the doorway, he paused. Without turning around, he said, "Whatever I had done, there was always a trail. Numbers left trails. Cash left trails. People left trails. And trails eventually led somewhere." The door closed softly behind him. On the counter, I noticed an envelope addressed to Marcus. The return address showed only initials. LM and JD and a downtown street. JD Juris Doctor. A lawyer. I folded the documents and placed them in my purse. My hands would not stop shaking. The lobby doors closed behind me as I stepped into the sunlight. Everything I had built was gone. The trail had ended exactly where Marcus said it would.